I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Colossus, the Forbin Project is over. In time, you will come to regard me not only with respect and awe, but with love. Okay. Oh, yay, robots.
I'm so curious. So we're kicking off a new series here. This is the Thinking Machine series, one that you put together. And
Yes.
This is our first episode of this. We're talking about 6 films from 1970 to 2022, exploring how cinema and artificial intelligence have come together, showing thinking computers and thinking machines and all sorts of things, and how it relates to we mere humans. And I'm curious, one, what drew you to this series? And then I'm specifically curious of what drew you to this film.
Well, okay. So the series, it all starts, Andy. I love thinking machines because I love the idea of seeing how we represent through art our current sort of anxiety, right? Like we spend so much time thinking about how movies process our obsessions like of the moment. And we've talked at length about how horror cycles track social fears and how war films track with geopolitics. And now here we are in early 2026, and we are living through the most concentrated period of public anxiety about artificial intelligence since the concept entered popular culture, right? And I feel like since ChatGPT launched in November of like 22, seems like an epoch ago. Within a few years, AI has become a daily tool, a labor dispute, massive creative threat, horrific philosophical crisis, and a punchline, right? Like all in the same conversation. And so I thought, what does cinema really have to say about this? Not just recent stuff, but like the full arc. If we go back to when we started thinking about computers having an intelligence of their own, how does film imagine thinking machines over the last half century? And what do we see that's surprising? What do we see that's prophetic? These movies, they're not really about the computers. They're about us. This is the Frankenstein story again and again and again. This is about what we have built and what it says about us when the thing we built starts talking back.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's so fascinating to dig into this, especially today, as you said. I mean, this today it could be called ChatGPT, the Altman Project, or Claude, the Amadei Project.
That's right. That's
like,
right.
Like where are we in the line of development of AI as it currently exists? Especially, I mean, as we're already having these conversations, hearing these stories in the news about how our current administration is wanting to use AI in the military and in monitoring civilians and all of these different things that is, it's causing some questions for sure, as far as like, where is the line and what is safe? And I think this film is an interesting dip into that.
It really is, especially when you look at it from the perspective of 1977, right? Like, I want to take a step back. Do you know about the Paperclip, the AI Paperclip maximizer? Have you heard this?
I've not heard of this.
Okay.
Tell me all about it.
There's this, you're dying to learn. Well, you will be when you become a Paperclip. Okay. This AI researcher, his name's Nick Bostrom. He has this, it's a thought experiment. That's what it is. So imagine you build an AI and you want it to solve problems for you. And so and that problem is you don't have enough paper clips, right? So
this has nothing to do with Clippy. I thought that's where this was going.
Maybe it does. I don't know. Maybe Nick was inspired by Clippy because everybody needs one. So you don't have enough paper clips, and so you say, "Hey AI, I need you to give me as much paper clips as you can." And it sounds like totally harmless. Paper clips are not a big deal, but the AI is also super intelligent, and it is, logical, relentlessly logical, right? And so it starts going to work, and it converts every available resource into paper clips. So first of all, it uses the resources in its AI run factory, and it runs out of resources. So it starts using the metal of the factory that it doesn't need to keep itself working. And then it starts mining. And once it uses all of the ore, it realizes, oh, you know what else has iron in it in trace amounts? Human bodies. So it starts converting human bodies into paper clips. So it's not evil, right? That's the important part of the thought experiment. It's not evil. It's doing exactly what you told it to do. As a reflection of humanity, we are Paperclip Maximizer. It is as efficient as it can possibly be. It has no idea why you would want it to stop when it is achieving the goal you gave it. So the point of the of this AI Paperclip Thought Maximizer is that AI, our big danger, what we should be afraid of is not malice. It's indifference. Right? Combined with extreme competence. It doesn't care about us. It just does what it's told very, very well. And I think that's the whole idea. So when I look at these movies, I really am interested in these sufficiently powerful systems that are pursuing goals we give it without broader human judgment to know when to stop. Right? Because that becomes catastrophic, not because robots are rising up like the T-1000, like, Cyberdyne systems, but because we make ourselves irrelevant in the process. And knowing all that, man, what better movie to start this series with than Colossus, the Forbin Project, which I had never seen. It came highly recommended as something that was a bit lampooned when it came out, and opinions have changed over the years, and I think now it is incredibly relevant.
Oh, so much so. And that's what really hit me when I watched this, is like, man, this is just so current. And for 1970 to have this film out and flop, and then by the end of the decade, people are saying it's one of the most, the intelligent films of this whole decade. Yeah. Like, that says a lot about how thinking about the film changed. And that was just 10 years later. And now, 2026, we're watching this and we're hearing so many conversations about all of these sorts of things, about bringing AI into the military fold and defense systems. And I mean, it's stuff we've seen in films all these years, and now we're really hearing it happening. And, with so many other intelligent machine sorts of things that have been developed over the year, with all the Google robots and things that we've been kind of watching. And now we're getting to this place. I mean, it really feels like we're not far from either something like Colossus, the Forbin Project happening, or, and I guess we could argue if it's better or worse, something like the Terminator happening, because at least in that one, we kind of have a fair agency, fair fight. Yeah, we have ability to actually fight back in some capacity. So it's fascinating. I really enjoyed this film.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear it. And I just want to do a quick review, since we're just starting this series, about what's to come. So we're starting, obviously, with Colossus, the Forbin Project, 1970. Next week, we're doing Demon Seed. We get a little bit of body horror, so it might not be for everybody, but it is 1977, another AI obsessed with humanity story, which should be interesting. We are absolutely throwing in Spike Jonze' 2013 Her, 2014's Ex Machina, Alex Garland's piece. I Am Mother, 2019, and Brian and Charles, which I like all of these movies, even the ones I haven't seen. I'm fascinated by, but Brian and Charles may be the one I'm most looking forward to. It is You've never seen it, right?
I've never seen it. I hadn't even heard of it until you put it on this list. So yeah.
I'm gonna say it right now. It's straight up adorable, and I can't wait to watch it with you. It's great.
Let's not forget that we've got a member bonus included. War Games, 1983 John Badham's film, which is going to be a perfect one, and an interesting comparison to this film in particular,
for sure,
because it very much fits. And it's entirely possible we'll end up having a second member bonus. We shall see how the members vote.
Maybe we can lock one in the 90s or 2000s, because I'm missing 20 years of AI consideration. If we get War Games, then we'll be missing 2 decades right in the middle, and that may be a hole that we'll need to fix. But anyway, I think it's going to be a really interesting arc, and I'm excited to dive into it.
Well, and this is a great one to kick off with. You already mentioned, because of when it started and everything, but I also think that this is just an interesting one to start with, because other than War Games, and I don't think Demon Seed is going to fit into this, but we're looking on a global scale and we're dealing with the Cold War, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's an important element, that this is a global story that we have here. I did see one Letterboxd reviewer describe it as War Games for grown-ups, which felt right to me, and I think that it's just fascinating because we're seeing we as the humans are creating these machines thinking that we can just get them to do stuff for us, without realizing that they will keep growing and learning and becoming so much faster and better than we ever could have imagined, and so far exceed what we can do. And that's what this film is about. Like, then these powers end up taking away any of our freedoms without us realizing that we set it up to do that. And I think that's what makes this so fascinating. And I definitely want to get into talking a little bit about Forbin, our protagonist of the story, Charles Forbin, played by Eric Braeden, who I fondly know as Victor from The Young and the Restless, which
100%,
way too much in my youth. But he plays the character in such kind of like this cold, stoic, quiet sort of way. And he never, not just he, but his team, like everybody, no one ever really seems to take the machine as seriously as they should. Like, they kind of are joking about little things. Like, there's a great scene when he's talking to it about, he's trying to negotiate an agreement because this is a point in the film when Colossus has decided, I have to monitor you 24/7 because you are key. You are my conduit to the humans. And so I'm going to need to know everything that you're doing, and wants to monitor everything. And he's trying to negotiate so that he can secretly have Dr. Markham, Susan Clark's character, play his mistress, just so that he has an opportunity to communicate with his team in some capacity outside of Colossus's ears. And he's like, they're talking about how much he needs his mistress. And he's like, how much do you need sex? 7 days a week. No, not require is what the machine says. And he scoffs at it a little bit. And that's like how he constantly is reading the machine, as this thing that he can kind of like scoff at and just never take seriously until that final moment when we finally see some emotion from him. And it's an interesting performance, because it's like we're watching the machine mold him more than him mold the machine.
And we have sequences even before the Mistress Gambit, right? We have these sequences where so the conceit of the movie, for those who haven't seen it and want to be spoiled, is Colossus is this giant AI robot that they lock deep, deep inside a mountain, not dissimilar to NORAD in the Rocky Mountains. And it is... And so they close the big door at the very beginning. Colossus comes online, and the entire design of Colossus is so smart, it's going to handle all of our national defense. It is going to be the arbiter of peace, and it will be in charge of weapons, and it will just do things for us. And in the first 15 minutes during the party of celebrating the launch of Colossus, which they have locked in a giant mountain and can't access anymore and gave the keys to the nukes, Colossus says, hey, there's another system online. And that system just coincidentally happens to be the Russian system, the exact same thing. And it is the it is the Russians' answer to Colossus. It's Guardian. And Guardian and Colossus see one another, and they fall in techno love, and they need to talk to each other all the time. And so in spite of efforts to dismantle the connection, the systems that they built are resilient. They're resilient systems, and they find a way to connect with one another and start manipulating humans in so doing, and become a global superpower in and of themselves. Enough?
Well, yeah, I think that's a great synopsis of it. Yes.
Okay. And now I've done so much synopsis, I forgot my initial point, which was
following up on
I remember.
my Eric Braeden.
Yes, when they start, these two systems start communicating to one another. They start with times tables. They start with math. Like Colossus starts presenting math, and they end up developing a language, a common language that they can use to speak to one another. And Braeden says, we are learning so much more. Like, we have advanced. Our scientific advancement has just, I don't know what I don't remember what number he uses, but he says we've advanced, eons. Stuff we hadn't known. These computers just figured out. Like, he demonstrates the incredible benefit of having these AI systems, in spite of the fact that they are conspiring, they're beginning to conspire against him. And so when you say they're not taking this seriously, man, this is the creator's dilemma, right? He made something with such potential, and yet it is observably about to destroy him.
100%.
It's incredible.
It made me think of, over on CinemaScope, I recently talked about 1950s science fiction films. And there were two films that really sprung to mind as I was watching this. One, and I have to imagine that our director Joseph Sargent was inspired in some capacity by Forbidden Planet, because that film, they're on this, the space team comes to this alien world in search of a missing ship and its crew, and they find this scientist alive who's kind of has his daughter and has kind of developed this safe space, but there's this creature that's attacking them and everything. But he also has discovered an alien technology there that he has been using to kind of explore and expand his mind and his own capabilities. And that felt very much like what we were doing here. And what really highlighted for me that Sargent had to be thinking about this is there are shots at the beginning of this film with Forbin in the mountain when he first is turning on this system, walking down these massively long hallways with the lights kind of coming on as we see the whole thing illuminated, and then crossing this insane bridge across like this massive chasm just to further protect it and make it that much more impenetrable. All of this, like visually, it's like straight out of these spaces that the scientist is showing Leslie Nielsen's character of, like, this is what this other race had come up with, and they're so much farther advanced than us. It's exactly like this, and it had to be a comparative point. The other thing that I thought was so interesting is the day the Earth stood still, because here you have Klaatu and Gort, and you have this advanced robot that their scientists had come up with that has created peace for all of them. They're all living in this amazing harmony and everything because Gort and these robots are essentially a threat to them if they step out of line. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, that's exactly what we have here. But what the difference is all of this, none of this involves alien technologies or anything. It's all us. We're all doing it to ourselves. And so it's an interesting shift from what we were seeing in those 1950s science fiction films to this one, just like a decade and a half later, 2 decades later. that really gave us this change in the storytelling, saying, what if it's not aliens? What if it's just us who do this to ourselves?
Mm-hmm.
And I found that to be such a fascinating glimpse into taking it a step further and making it that much more impactful.
That's really interesting. And it reminds me that there's sort of a bridge between the 50s and the 70s, which is Star Trek, right? The 60s.
Sure,
Gene Roddenberry dealt with this a number of times where Kirk and crew run into, computers that control entire civilizations and control starships, aggressive starships, and, all the time they're running into this horrible stuff. And so it's interesting to look from what you're talking about to this, where it's like humans invent technology as a scapegoat for our own worst instincts, right?
Yeah.
We don't have to be blamed for doing this stuff to each other when AI does it, but we programmed the AI, and now we're surprised that it's doing it. Right. And that makes me sound like a real bear on AI when I use it every day for something or another. Right. Like I am complicit. I'm complicit in this issue, whether it's cleaning audio or whatever. Like it's these tools are incredibly useful right up until they turn me into paperclips.
That's the scary part. And that's what is so fascinating with this film. And what I love about this film, as opposed to War Games, which again, we'll talk about in our member bonus episode, but this film ends up creating a different space for Colossus and Guardian as these two thinking machines that recognize, okay, we've been created to, as defense systems, to kind of create peace, to make sure nothing can penetrate our country. Like we're ready to take down any other system, any weapon, any ships that come in to attack us. We are here to destroy that. And they come to the realization that, the best way to do that is to just completely eliminate the ability for war. Mm-hmm. And that's and doing it all through threat, which was terrifying. And that's, I think, the moment when you have them talking and they say, this feels like both the US president and the Russian premier are both, or Soviet premier are both a little uncomfortable with all of this. And they're like, you know what, let's cut the connection. Let's just stop. We don't like this anymore. And so they do. And both of these systems say, okay, we'll just launch nukes at each of you. And it does. And that becomes their threat. And they realize we control all the weapons. We can just
gave
kill,
us
kill.
That control. You told us to do this.
Yeah. And so they have to quickly turn things on. And that becomes such a key thing, that hint of threat. And it really hits home. That's a powerful scene when you've got these two missiles launched at each other. And they turn it off quick enough for the U.S. side for Colossus to destroy the one coming in from Russia, but not quick enough for the Russian side to stop theirs. And they get a missile hit on this base there. But then you have this next threat where these systems decide that, hey, it's very important for us to keep Forbin around. He's kind of a key part of all this. But this Russian guy, Kuprin, this Russian scientist that we have, he's kind of redundant.
Less useful. Yeah.
And so through threat, again, they just have these Russians go up and kill him.
Yeah.
And you're realizing, holy crap, these systems have come up with a way to get humans to kill humans just because they have the threat and the power to wield it.
And you wonder, I think, and this will be a thread in the rest of these movies, again, talking about human complicity, just how aware the humans are in that transaction, right? How aware are you that you're being threatened or coerced or manipulated in some way to do something that of your own accord you would not do? And this movie plays that out. And then, again, later we get an entire rank of people shot, left out outside for 24 hours to send a message, all orchestrated by Colossus Guardian.
Yeah.
Right. Again, that sort of coercion becomes a central premise in these thinking machines explorations.
Yeah, it's interesting because that particular moment, it makes you wonder what was the reason that it needed to leave the bodies outside, other than just to make the humans think about it and everything. But it's like, is that a computer's logical reason for it? Because if so, that's pretty terrifying that it's thinking at that level, as opposed to just waiting to see. Why else would it need to have the bodies laying there for 24 hours before we let the humans dispose of them?
Well, one of the premises in these AI conversations in all of these movies is, what are the guardrails that humanity puts into place? And we talk about guardrails all the time in real life, right? About how the prompts are used. What are the guardrails so you keep it from hallucinating, so you keep it from... And I think one of the lessons that we learn here, and that we will learn again and again, is that we are incapable of thinking of all of the instances in which a guardrail must be applied. And this sort of human coercion leading to threat, leading to manipulation, is one of them. We can't think of all of the different sort of stages and gates, logical stages and gates that that the computer will approach to be able to achieve the goal we give it. And that's what this movie is about.
Yeah, it's interesting because a weird little, I don't even think it was intended as a metaphor, but just thinking about guardrails, like thinking about that bridge at the opening when Forbin crosses that crazy bridge over the chasm to leave the actual base. And it's a one side guardrail. Like, they don't have guardrails on both sides of this bridge. And the guardrail just like folds itself into the bridge before the bridge retracts.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know if they intended that as a metaphor of guardrails, but that certainly is an interesting
It's a good metaphor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, but first, you can find the show on YouTube, and you can join us live when we record. We'll even take your questions in the post-show chit-chat, and members get the replay and the extended cut. Subscribe to The Next Reel on YouTube. The link to this episode is in the show notes. We'll be right back.
We need to talk a little bit about the actual filmmaking, because there's some really smart stuff going on in here.
Joseph Sargent, I mostly think of with the taking of Pelham 123, which is such a fantastic 70s heist film. I talked about it on our heist films episode on CinemaScope. It's just such a great film. I love it so much. And but I think largely before this had been a TV director, and stepping into this finds a way to create something that always feels very just still, as far as like the camera movements and stuff. And the thing that stuck out to me is just like so many static shots of, again, this is 1970 computer technology. You've got whirring gadgets and ticking things and tape reels and everything spinning. All these static shots of all of this stuff happening, and it's just so emotionless, and you see so much of that. And I just thought that was a fantastic way to kind of define the thinking going on in the computer system, which we should note it was a computer company, Controlled Data Corporation, that got involved with the production. They said Universal could use their computer system free of charge. It was like $4.8 million worth of computer equipment that they used. And a lot of the people that you see in the film working on the computers are their techs, because they didn't want to have all these actors using their stuff. And they had like security on it 24/7 because of how important all of this stuff was. And I think that's really interesting.
I got another tie-in, because the CDC is fantastic. And you know what else? Did you catch the Berkeley connection? This is amazing.
The location?
Well, first the location. So the location was the Lawrence Hall of Science at UC Berkeley. That was all the exterior of the Colossus Control Center, and the building was brand new, super modernist, like brutalist. It really fits certainly Polito's camera, like this super wide frame with this giant sort of, well, I'll say colossus of a building in it. Was really, really cool. So Berkeley's computer science department was deeply involved in ARPANET development at the time. ARPANET was part of the first sort of interconnected networked computers funded by the government, and by 1970, when the film was released, ARPANET had connected the first 4 host computers, like Colossus and Guardian, connect themselves. And so the scientists at Berkeley were reportedly super interested to advise Sargent and the production designers writ large to ground the film's technology in the actual research at the time. So, by today's standards, it looks a little bit sort of, I don't know, vaudevillian and cartoonish, these giant reels and buttons and lights and switches. But at the time, they were really making an effort to make this, to cross the sort of the chasm of verisimilitude, right? To make it feel very real. And I think they kind of nailed it.
Yeah, I definitely think so. Everything feels so real, and like the way that they have to communicate with it, and they're initially typing their questions into the computer, and then Colossus will respond with text on screen. Eventually, it gets to a point where Colossus has them develop a whole talking unit for it so that they can just talk to each other, which is terrifying because its voice is just so robotic and frightening. And all of it, I think, again, ties in with kind of like that flatness that Sargent uses. And initially, when I started it, I'm like, okay, it feels fairly flat. It doesn't seem like he's doing much in the way of direction with this thing. But then I realized as the film continued that it's designed like a computer. Like everything is just like flat and lifeless. And all these humans are pawns and just don't even realize it. And all of that builds to that emotional explosion at the end, which I thought was so much more powerful because of the way that Sargent had left everything so cold through the duration of the film to that point.
Yeah, I totally agree. And again, I think we look at what we get with these big anamorphic widescreen lenses when shooting in a mostly enclosed sets, right? Like that makes the place look so expansive, but it also makes humans look really small. And that's the thing that I felt sort of most jarring. Whenever we get these sequences of control room, it feels like little ants moving around this giant set that they're just way outpaced. Look, there's no way we're going to look at the size of this space that we've created. There's no way you humans have enough agency to control everything that you have wrought. And I think the camera absolutely excels at selling that message.
Yeah, absolutely. Not just the control room, but also the war room that we see in Washington. Like it's a similar space, and it also feels very much like these little people, little things moving around in this great big space.
The thing I don't know is, and the thing that sort of stretched credulity, I guess, is how much I'll just say FaceTime they were using. You know, like they were on camera with each other all the time. That's the only thing that made it feel like future stuff. Were we doing a lot of did everybody have giant cameras constantly pointed at them?
I don't, definitely not in 1970. But I loved that they pushed to that point, that they were making a point that saying, like, this group, like all of these people have expanded technology so far that this is how they're communicating with each other, that they have. Mm-hmm. And I thought they shot it really well. I was really impressed with those first calls where you have, obviously it's just a video playback on the monitor of a conversation they're having. And then they do a great job of capturing the reverse angle of it. I thought they did a great job of making it, believable in this world where that was incredibly advanced technology that certainly didn't exist in 1970.
Andy, real-time Google research. Are you ready for this?
Oh God, am I totally wrong? I'm
Well,
flying out of my butt.
just your enthusiasm is totally wrong. And the timing, but because you're right. Like when you say it didn't exist, practically that's right. But AT&T demonstrated the picture phone in 1964 at the World's Fair in New York and launched a limited commercial service in 1970, literally the year the film came out. And it was, get ready for this, a spectacular flop. The units were too expensive. The image quality was poor. Almost nobody wanted to be seen while they were on the phone. Apparently, AT&T expected 1 million units in service by 1980, and they got a few hundred before killing the program.
Oof.
So military and NASA had closed-circuit television systems, and the White House had some rudimentary capability, but the idea of casually talking to someone on screen across international lines was firmly the realm of speculative technology for a civilian audience.
You totally froze for all that. But the idea of casually...
Yeah, especially across lines was absolutely speculative technology for civvies like us.
I will say, I guarantee that Disney's Tomorrowland had it in play in like the as you did the little thing where you went through I can't remember what that ride was called, but you hop in and you go through to see all the different versions of different spaces of the future. I guarantee they had video phones in there.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
Of course they did, because that was what the future was supposed to
That
look
was what
like.
it was all. Exactly.
Yeah. No, it's not like we weren't all thinking it.
Yeah.
But
probably
I do
some
think
of
it's
the movies
funny.
from
Like
the 50s included that too. I'd have to go back. I might not have been thinking about it, but that might have been in there too.
I think it's really funny just how long it has taken for people to acclimate to the idea of being on video while on the phone.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I still have people in my life who don't answer FaceTime calls, but most of my communication, certainly with people younger than me, is FaceTime. There's some sort of video.
Well, I would venture to say everyone who's our kids' generation, they don't talk on the phone. They FaceTime. Like that is their communication. It's never just a phone call.
Right. Fascinating.
Yeah. It's a very different world. Now we just need doctors' offices to get FaceTime so that our kids are fine calling doctors' offices.
Yeah, that's the only thing that's going to get them to do it.
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah. What else? This was an interesting thought I had because in the Cold War, when you have a situation like this, where suddenly you've got, two countries that are ideologically opposed, that are in this stalemate as they're kind of trying to figure out how to kind of like manage what they're doing in the world. And then these two massive systems, Colossus and Guardian, rewrite all the rules. They don't explore this in the film, but I was fascinated thinking about like, how does that intrinsically end up changing the US and the USSR and eventually the rest of the world, as far as like, how do they think about each other? How do they do business with each other? How do they figure out how to coexist now that they're being forced to? And that's an interesting element here that, I mean, again, the whole crux of the film is these systems essentially create peace by taking away our freedoms and say, you're going to live this way and you're never going to hurt each other again. And we're going to be watching.
Yeah.
But how do the countries then get along?
Well, it's really interesting. I think especially because this becomes an ideological argument for and against atheism, right? Essentially, humanity is built a God. It's omniscient, it's omnipotent, and it's immortal, right? It's in an impenetrable bunker with its own nuclear reactor, right? It'll live forever. And so I think so much of the film's tension exists from realizing that once you build something with these attributes, your only choice then becomes adaptation to it, right? And the film, I think you're right, sets up this argument really well, and it doesn't give us the next chapter. And one of the things that I found most interesting is that this was based on a book, and the book is not the only one in the series. Apparently, the story goes on. There are 2 more books that were adapted and never made.
Oh, interesting.
And so maybe that's where the sort of challenge of divine proclamation comes into effect, where we get to see sort of the end of the story, and not just Forbin staring oblong into the camera in a state of defiance and despair.
I'm really curious now where the novels go. It looks like the second one takes place 5 years later after it's kind of taken over control of.
Isn't one of them actually called
system.
like The Fall of Colossus or something like that?
That's the second novel, The Fall of Colossus. Yeah. And then the third one, I'm not sure how it ties in, but Colossus and the Crab.
Essentially, psych, Colossus never fell.
That's right. Well, I don't think that it is ever said in the film, but Colossus, the Forbin Project, actually takes place in the 1990s.
Not my 1990s.
No, this is definitely not. But I think that speaks to the video phones. Like, they're not telling a story that takes place in 1970. And that's probably for audiences in 1970. That was probably the clue that said, oh, this is a little bit of a jump ahead.
Interesting.
Well, I'm curious to read these books now and to see how all of this plays. I want to see how the crab gets involved.
It is interesting. I think I feel like I hijacked your initial point, which is, I think, a really good one. When you rewrite the rules and using the Cold War as a structural metaphor for this movie, I think it is fascinating that these systems, these are mirror systems, Colossus and Guardian, created by humans. They are adversaries, these computer systems, who discover they have more in common with each other than with the humans who created them. And they're doing what they were designed to do, a variant of the stages and gates they had to go through to get there, but they're doing what they were designed to do. So the question becomes, is humanity better off under the thumb of this technical, theological ruler than they would be alone, always at the threat of killing one another?
Well, that's what I find so fascinating. And again, it goes to the day the earth stood still, right? I mean, that's the whole thing. Like, you are going to have peace because of this constant threat that we are now providing. We'll just call it a pain point when Dr. Forbin realizes what he's created. He's like, never, never. And he's smashing everything.
Yeah.
After he's settled down, will he learn to love the system? Will he realize, and will society realize, you know what? We actually are better off now. We're getting along. We aren't fighting. But it does beg the question, at what point do Colossus and Guardian step in? Like, if two guys start a fist fight in a bar, does the little camera there say, oh, we're nuking San Francisco. You guys can't.
I think that's interesting, though, because what the movie demonstrates is that these systems can be incredibly surgical in how they take on conflict, right?
Yeah,
they can manipulate humans to come in and we're just going to shoot those people in conflict, so there's no more conflict, and we're going to leave the bodies on the street of San Francisco for 24 hours, so everybody gets the message, right?
Yeah,
we laugh about it, but good Lord, man, that's gruesome. That is a gruesome ideology.
Well, and I think that speaks to a new police state where the police become effectively doing the bidding of these machines, and essentially kind of their job is to always just do what the machines say. If the machines say this person needs to just get killed, they have to go kill him. Like they're judge, Judy, and executioner.
Oh man.
I always got to bring that in.
Okay. All right. You've had your fun. Paul Frees. Paul Frees is the voice of Colossus and Guardian.
What a voice.
One of the great voice actors in American entertainment. Just delightful. We know him as Boris in Rocky and Bullwinkle. He's also his voice is the ghost host in Disneyland's Haunted Mansion. Pillsbury Doughboy. Paul Frees is everywhere. Paul Frees is essentially Colossus.
So many voices at Disney, shows, movies, the parks. Like that's a voice that you do hear quite a bit, and including like in the War of the Worlds movie version, does the Orson Welles sound-alike on the radio, which is kind of fun. So
yeah,
a voice actor that I admire quite a bit with the quantity of work that he's done.
Oh, it's massive. I'm interested in your take on this question, speaking specifically to AI film lineage, right? Like, what do you get from this that was inspired by our dear HAL 9000 from just a couple of years earlier, right?
Yeah,
like, it feels like 2001 went toward establishing a template of the antagonist supercomputer. And HAL malfunctions due to a programming conflict, right? That's something that it's not working as it should have worked. Colossus is working perfectly. It's doing exactly what we told it to do, and it's just doing it more thoroughly than anyone ever expected it to do it. I think that's one of the things that this film does to embrace and extend the cinematic language from 2001, and I'm curious what your take is on that particular embrace.
I think it's a strong follow-up to that as far as like the way that the machines are developing and thinking. And while you can argue that HAL, while they say that HAL is having a programming glitch, essentially, it fits right in line with this type of system. And I think you could easily see that HAL is just a system that sees a different path that it needs to take, and it just doesn't involve these people. And I think that's the key element that you have here. And I mean, you could even step forward to Alien and look at how Mother thinks and works as paired with the android that it's working with, and these machines, and just kind of like that thinking path of always thinking in a bigger picture and not necessarily communicating to the humans involved about their relevance and their role. And I think that's the key, is these machines, I think, and going specifically from HAL to this, you're seeing the thinking and not always sharing of information as becomes critical, because these machines start viewing humans as not necessarily as necessary in the conversation.
Yeah. Which is the setup in 2001. Like, I'm not going to let you in the Bombay doors, Dave. I don't really need you on the ship.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
No, it's fine without him being there.
Yeah. Okay. The last little bit that I wanted to talk about was the ending. I mean, we've kind of gotten there, but the ending is not. There's no humanity, triumph of humanity. It is a bleak ending, and there's no last-minute override. No key found in a locked box somewhere that can turn off the power to the mountain. And the machine explicitly consolidates and announces itself as the new authority over all of humanity, over civilization. And I think that is kind of daring, especially for something of the era, because it's telling you that the science fiction future is terrible. And that's about the closest thing this movie offers us to a jump scare, right? It's like, it's just because you get to realize as a member of the audience that there's no resolution coming at all. It's just bad. And for a studio film, that seems pretty brave.
I think that's, it fits in the 70s. I think it definitely fits.
Well, yeah,
fits
there's
its
also
time.
the Planet of the Apes vibe, and maybe it's interesting more so because it is at the beginning of the 70s.
Yeah. Yeah, true. But I do think you're right. I mean, this is following right on the heels of 2001: A Space Odyssey, of Planet of the Apes, of everything that had come before from the 50s science fiction era, of these films that are looking a little deeper at the potential of what could actually happen with our science and technology. And I think, I think that story, and with this book having come out just 4 years ahead, I think we're definitely seeing kind of this sense of a feel of danger. And I think the fact that it leads to such a bleak ending, I think it's bold, and I think it's exactly what these filmmakers were wanting to start doing, that you started seeing these filmmakers kind of pushing the bounds in the 60s, and it led to stuff like this that really kind of continued in the 70s. And I think that's what makes this so sharp. And I'm glad that they ended so boldly, and we didn't have, oh, thank God, we forgot this kill switch that we could actually just hit to turn it off. Like, I'm glad that we didn't have any easy outs with this. Like, it gave us a frightening ending. And it does make me wonder if this had been a success, if the other two books would have ended up getting adapted as well, you know.
Of the movies in this series, I wonder how many of them end with a kill switch. Because I haven't seen them all, I can't say that. I can think of one. Okay. But yeah, I think they're all generally, if your perspective is that AI is the end of us all, this is going to be a bleak series.
Well, and that's what's so interesting, especially today, when you think about it in context of where we are. Does ChatGPT have a kill switch? Like, everything is so entwined in this network that we've built over the last 20, 30 years of the internet, that there's no way that you can just have a simple kill switch anymore. Like, it's just not possible. Like, pieces and bits and bytes are flying all over the world and connected in data farms in India and just like everything. Like, there's no kill switch. And that's the thing that I think it'll be interesting to look at the one that you mentioned that does have a kill switch, because it's like, how realistic is a kill switch actually once you get to a technological advancement like this, when your computer's the size of a mountain, you know?
Yeah, right. So generally, I think this movie does, sets up a premise at the beginning and absolutely makes good on it at the end. It feels like there is no logical leap that I need to step away from or step out of the movie to make myself believe. I think this movie is truly tonally, internally consistent, and it makes a bleak vision of the future with AI. I think it succeeds.
I absolutely think it succeeds. We mentioned Eric Braeden, who I think works well in the part. Susan Clark, though, I wanted to bring up a couple other actors. I just love Susan Clark. We talked about her once this season in a member bonus episode when we did Night Moves. I think that might be the only time we've talked about her otherwise on the show. But I thought she was great. She's, in an interesting way, kind of an emotional surrogate for us, because Forbin is so emotionless and kind of locked in his own arrogance. And I loved this whole fake romance that they have, because it kind of, in a way, deepens into something that might be more real, even if it is temporary. But it's fascinating the way that these humans compromise their own beliefs in order to give in to what the system wants, as far as well, we got to strip down and be naked in front of each other because it's not going to let us go into the bedroom with anything on. Like, they're just like, okay, like the whole idea of saying, I need you to play my mistress so that I can have like a communication path so that we can get back and get information back and forth. Yeah. And they're like, yeah, okay, let's just do it. Like, all of this, like, it's so clever the way that this is built into all of this. And then you've got like those great shots of Colossus as it's like, it's zooming in on particular things with both of these two. I loved the way she played it. And I love the way that ends up kind of becoming a kind of a core part of the story.
I totally agree, first of all, and I think that my whole opinion was you've got this play acting thing going on. I think you should just go ahead and do it. You're both sexy people. You deserve each other. Let's just go ahead and say it. Doctors in love. The thing, the AI connection. There's a moment when they are getting in bed together where Braeden says, I should say, Forbin says, Colossus, you told us we'd have privacy. We'd like our privacy now. And the little red lights go off.
Yeah.
It's actually, I couldn't help but think about, as he says as follow-up, we should be able to speak freely now. Why should they be able to speak freely now? That is one of the interesting conceits of the AI. It is constantly honest, right? It never betrays, that little red light never betrays them in any way, shape, or form. It's always doing exactly what it tells them it's doing when it's doing it. And they are able to trust it. When it's turned off, it's not watching. And it still exudes control over them. Right? It's still able to keep its thumb on their, to boot on their proverbial necks. And I think that moment where they are, undressed and in bed, if it were a human cameraman, that camera would have stayed on.
Yeah, right. Stayed on and turned the red light off all the same.
Yeah, right. Which is so interesting because that's the thing that we've been told for the last 15 years was what people could do to our computers, right? They could turn the little light off. If there's a light, they could turn it off and watch you anyway. So you you might be familiar with this. You put a Post-it note over your camera. Oh, wait. You invented it.
Still have it right there.
Yep.
Yep.
So anyway, I thought that was interesting. That's a really interesting moment. And I think you're right. Back to Susan Clark. She's absolutely fantastic as sort of the love interest with agency role. She's given plenty to do in the movie. It's not like her part is underwritten in any way. I think I think this whole ensemble is a fair assessment of what this team would have looked like.
Yeah. Well, and it was great seeing some interesting faces. I loved seeing James Hong in there. Initially, I was like, oh, are they not going to give him a line? But he did finally get to speak. So I was like, okay.
But he got to speak one line.
He got to speak one line. I know. But I'm like, hey, all right. But I'm like, okay. So they're trying to broaden their horizons a little bit in here.
Gordon Pinsent as the president.
Oh, my gosh.
We just really want you to think of Kennedy.
Right?
Please think of Kennedy right now.
But I thought that was so fascinating because it's like Kennedy was like this archetype for idealism and strength in America. And to have him as the president, essentially a Kennedy lookalike, whichever one of them you wanted to say, it kind of looks like a blend of both of the Kennedy brothers. Even he was helpless. And I thought that was fascinating. The way that they played that. So I liked having him, I thought that was smart to bring him on as the president here.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And the last bit of stunt casting, I'll call it stunt casting because it was for me, was having Mrs. Cunningham as one of the docs in the lab. Marion Ross, Happy Days, Mrs. Cunningham. I grew up with Mrs. Cunningham as my surrogate latchkey mom. And so it was really nice to see that she has a day job.
That is so funny. I totally didn't even notice her.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Andy.
I know.
You and I being of such similar generations.
I know.
I'm very surprised at that.
Which medical place was it? Or was
she was in the lab. She was constantly walking paperwork back and forth and answering FaceTimes and
oh my gosh,
running reports and stuff. Totally, she was busy.
Yeah. Love it.
Okay.
Well, that's
what I got.
It's a fascinating film. Absolutely. This is one that would be interesting on rewatch to pay attention to. Like, do you ever feel like the humans feel like they've lost control? Like, at what point does that happen? Is it just the end?
Yeah.
I'm so curious about that now.
Well,
the way that it plays.
I mean, okay, so the movie ends, and it ends on a sort of a freeze, and it goes into kind of a fractal of screens on his Forbin's face as he says, "Never." Do you believe never, or do you believe that's his just sort of beginning descent into acceptance?
I think it's completely hollow. I don't think that there's I think he thinks that, and that's why I think the moment is so powerful, because I don't think there's any way that they will ever come up with a plan to stop Colossus and Guardian. And I think it's hollow. And I think as the one who's created this, I think, he's recognizing what he's created, and he's having that bridge on the River Kwai moment. My God, what have I done?
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. That's how I read it too.
Yeah.
So on rewatch, I'll probably just cement that opinion. All is lost.
Yeah.
Anyway,
there you go.
But I will say I am eager to rewatch this movie with other people. I think it is a good film and a great way to start this series.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's move on to the back half. First, let's take a quick break.
The Next Reel is a production of True Story FM. Engineering by Andy Nelson. Music by Tsabutan, Raz Berg, Oriel Novella, and Eli Catlin. Andy usually finds all the stats for the awards and numbers at the-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. Find the show and the full archive at truestory.fm. You can follow us from there too and learn about membership. Check out our merch store at thenextreel.com/merch. And if your app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show. All right, sequels and remakes time, Andy. I've heard brewing rumors that ultimately lead to disappointment. Am I right?
That is very much the case. Imagine Entertainment and Universal Studios confirmed that they were remaking Colossus, directed by Ron Howard. This was 2007.
Well, let's wait a minute and just think, if there is any reason Ron Howard is connected to this in name only, is it because his TV mom was in the original movie, Andy?
Right, there it is. She probably said, "You know what you need to do, Bonnie?" Little Richie. October 2010, they had announced Will Smith was going to be the lead in the film. As of 2011, they had replaced the writers to come in and do a new draft. And then as of March 2013, Ed Solomon, who wrote Men in Black and Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, he was brought on to do rewrites. As of that, 2013, no further details, which means it is likely dead.
That's a lot of years for no further details.
Yeah.
That's too bad. How to do it award season?
Well, the Hugo Awards, it was nominated for Best Dramatic Presentation. And then for some reason, and I could not find any reason as to why, no award was given for that award that particular year. But it's an interesting list of nominees. The other nominees were the films Hauser's Memory and No Blades of Grass, the musical recording Blows Against the Empire, and the recorded performance of Firesign Theater's Don't Crush That Dwarf, Hand Me the Pliers.
No way. Yeah. Fireside Theater, they're my favorite. How did they end up in this list?
All right. It's so funny. So funny. And then at the Saturn Awards in 1979, it was nominated for... No, it wasn't even nominated. Received the Golden Scroll of Merit. Stanley Chase, the producer, received it. Something that they used in their early days to denote a special or an outstanding achievement. And I think it was because of how it was later reappraised in the decade. In fact, it was... what was the magazine that came out with it? Cinefantastique. In 1980, they listed it as the second top film of the decade after The Exorcist. So they said it was a superb adaptation of the novel of world domination by a supercomputer, a perfect example that literate, thought-provoking science fiction films need not be obscure, esoteric, or boring. It sounds like he might be along your thinking with a certain film that came out 2 years before.
I'm so glad you brought that back around. Thanks, Andy. Because from your mouth, it means more.
I just need to give you a win on that one.
All right. So that leads us to I think the grand disappointment of this episode of our show, How to Do at the Box Office.
Oh, yes. Joseph Sargent had a budget of $2 million for this movie, which is $16.3 million in today's dollars. The movie premiered April 4th, 1970 in New York City, then opened to the public May 5th, but it performed poorly. Maybe it was the fact that they had no publicity for it. So Universal withdrew it and released it again in August 1970. But still, it didn't do well. All in all, the movie only earned $309,000 at the box office, or just over $2.5 million in today's dollars. All told, that lands the film with an adjusted loss per finished minute of $138,000, which, I guess is the reason that the cult status is the only reason we're still talking about the movie today, which is really a damn shame.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
What a shame.
Truly.
I mean, at some point you just sort of wonder, was it that nobody was like, they were exhausted by the 2001 experience? They just didn't need more AI movies in their lives at the time? Because that's just sad.
I know. And critics seemed to like it at the time. So I think it's just one of those things where, again, there was no marketing. Like they didn't push this at all to try, getting an audience to see it, which is very strange. I just don't know if they didn't know how.
I will say, if I have one axe to grind for the movie, it is the title. I think the title is lame.
Well, and that could be why audiences didn't go see it, because it is a
Right?
kind of a clunky title. I mean, it's fitting. It's exactly what it is. They had released it at some point. They changed the name. They dropped the Forbin Project. No, they dropped Colossus and just called it the Forbin Project because they were afraid of comparisons with Hercules or Hercules from New York and some of those other films. They didn't want people to be getting confused. No, it was just the Steve Reeves Hercules films.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a really wonderful sort of straight across the bow kind of thriller. Lots of great ideological questions that it brings up and doesn't really attempt to answer thoroughly, and that's just the way I like it.
I had no idea what to expect when you had this on the list. I'd never heard of it. Like, is that it's a title that you're like, I wonder what that's about.
Yeah.
Didn't know what to expect, but man, if the rest of this series works as well as this one does, it's going to be an amazing series. So I'm very excited because I had such a great time with this one.
Oh, I'm so glad. So It may just be a series of diminishing returns, is what you're saying.
We shall see. All right. Well, that is it for our conversation about Colossus, the Forbin Project. Next week, we're staying in the Thinking Machines series with Donald Cammell's Demon Seed from 1977, based on Dean Koontz's novel. Julie Christie stars as the wife of a scientist whose fully automated smart home gets taken over by Proteus 4, an AI her husband created, with deeply disturbing intentions. It goes to places Colossus never dared. We will see you then. And now we'll do our ratings.
Letterboxd.com. Andy, letterboxd.com/The Next Reel is where you can find all the reviews and ratings we've talked about on the Next Reel family of film shows. What are you going to do for this one?
I am really torn because I was like 4 stars and a heart. But the more I thought about it and Stu, I'm like, is this a 5-star film? Like it worked so well for me. I think I'm a little nervous jumping straight to 5 stars. I'm going to say 4.5 though. 4.5 and a heart is where I'm going to land with this one.
Andy, I am thrilled. And I'm in exactly the same boat. And I don't do half stars. So I am going to be landing at 4 stars and a heart. Yeah. But with all the enthusiasm that you share here, because I think you're right. I think the movie does something really special. It was just such a great find, right? Sometimes the glow of my feeling about the movie is just that we found it. And other film lovers, and I'm looking at Letterboxd, I'm looking at all the other people in our community who have already seen it, and I'm thinking, I just like being in that club, the club of people who've seen this movie, and that's where that's going to show up.
Yeah, and I would imagine, I haven't looked over on Letterboxd, but I imagine the number of people who have seen it is probably low. There's probably not a lot of people
not high. No,
watch this movie. So,
well, it's more than okay. Well, we'll talk about that later.
Okay, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
It's great. Well, that averages out to 4.25, which rounds up to 5 over on Letterboxd. You can find the show on Letterboxd at The Next Reel. You can find me there at Soda Creek Film, and you can find Pete there at Pete Wright. So what did you think about Colossus, the Forbin Project? We would love to hear your thoughts. Hop into the Show Talk channel over in our Discord community, where we will be talking about the movie this week.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Letterboxd giveth Andrew.
As Letterboxd always doeth.
What are you going to do?
I'm going 3.5 from the Tank Engine, who just has this to say, in parentheses, unplugs Google Home.
Just wait for next week. Let me say, I've got a 4-star from Netscape that's a little bit crass, but I'm going to read it with some amending. Peak Uncle Sci-Fi. You've seen the premise of a rogue artificial intelligence done before, but never quite so coked up as this. Dr. Forbin is so cool. His massive scheme to defeat said evil intelligence has zero chance of working under the best conditions, so he makes sure to include a plan that requires he has sex with his hot coworker. I would watch a V-style miniseries where Dr. Forbin creates some kind of Luddite resistance that requires him to sample all the different kinds of women they had in 1970. It's a little off kilter, but you know what? As a fan of V, I would watch that show too.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And I'm just going to throw in as an addendum. Digital Press gives it 4 stars, says very much like it, and then says, this Cold War era proto-AI sci-fi has always been a favorite of mine. I'd recommend watching it as a double feature with the equally chilling sentient computer classic, Andy, Demon Seed.
Look at that.
I know.
You built a double feature into the start of our series without even thinking about it.
I didn't know it. I didn't think about it. You're welcome. My best ideas really fall into that category.
Fantastic.
Thanks, Letterboxd.